Thanks very much, Geeta. Well, I can tell you the markets have certainly responded well to the news that Barclays Chief Executive Bob Diamond has resigned. Now, just repeating, Mr. Diamond has said he was stepping down because the external pressure on the bank risked damaging the franchise. I can also tell, just before I came on set, that Barclays shares, and they've been very volatile last week, of course, after Barclays paid out that fine of around $450 million, and they're up today slightly, almost 1% up. Well, let's get more on this. Chris Roebuck is a banking expert from London's Cass Business School. He joins me in the studio. Chris, always good to have you in the studio. Look, many will say it was inevitable. We were going to see Mr. Diamond resign. But is there any surprise in the timing, given Mr. Diamond is going to face that Treasury Select Committee hearing tomorrow?
I think it's quite surprising on the basis that the chairman of the bank went yesterday. And to have a position where you have the chairman and chief executive going in 48 hours is unheard of. And to some degree, you would have thought that Bob Diamond would have waited till there had been some established culpability to actually reconsider his position if he felt appropriate. No, I mean, this is
could that suggest then that he's worried about what this committee could dig up? I mean,
he might be. Then again, he might not be. The point is that I think this is a totality of political pressure and business pressure at the same time, because much of this pressure was coming from politicians who wanted a scalp. They wanted to show that they were taking into account public anger. I mean, to be perfectly honest, there is public anger, but there's also public anger at politicians for constantly suggesting that everybody who works in the banking industry is corrupt. What we're talking about here is we're talking about maybe maximum 200 people over 20 banks across the world, which works out at a few people per 100,000. If you take recent events, proportionately, there's more dodgy MPs in the British Parliament than there are dodgy bankers.
Some will also say his resignation, since he's not connected to the bank in tomorrow's hearing, he'll be very open, or he can be very open. The worry, though, for some are saying about this report about a phone call during the crisis between Bob Diamond and the Deputy Governor of the Bank of England. What happens if it's found to be, the Bank of England has had some form of involvement in this?
Well, it's not going to look very good for Mr. Tucker's potential prospects to become Governor of the Bank of England. But let's be fair, this took place at the height of the financial crisis. And this actual problem was across the world. And what happened was, I suspect, a number of central banks were saying to their local banks, look, we've lost a couple of banks and we don't want to lose any more. So if there's anything you can do to prevent your bank going down, do it.
Just very briefly, could this set a precedent? Now Bob Diamond has resigned. Could this set a precedent for the other bank bosses when it's found out other banks were involved with this rigging?
If that's the case, we've got 20 banks in the frame. We could see the sight of 20 bank chief executives, if you take that forward, having to resign in the next few months. If you go on the principle that if you have anybody in your organisation doing anything wrong, you should resign, it will cause corporate chaos, and maybe, hopefully, it should apply to British ministers, so if anything goes wrong in their departments, they might resign for a change as well.
Don't hold your breath on that one, Chris. Thanks for joining us. Chris Roebuck from Cass Business School.